Everyone, welcome to my TED Talk. Just kidding. Welcome to my methods presentation. Thank you to Susan for letting me record my presentation. I'm so sorry I can't be in class today. I'm sure y'all are killing it or will whenever you give your presentations, but I'm going to talk about the methods section of my project on generative AI in two-year writing classrooms. So I wanted to kind of just give you an overview again of the concepts I'm studying. So I'm looking at whether attitudes toward generative AI, pressure, and self-competency can influence the intention to use generative AI or are correlated to. And then I'm controlling for gender, age, year of study, program, and enrollment status, and specifically looking at two-year college students in this study. So based on these concepts, these are the research questions I have so far. How do two-year college students view the use of generative AI, and what factors influence that use? My hypotheses right now are that attitudes towards generative AI will correlate to use of generative AI for two-year college students, though I don't have a direction for this hypothesis. The other two variables, pressure and self-competency, I think pressure will positively correlate with intention to use generative AI for two-year college students, i.e. the more pressure a student feels to perform academically based on, financial pressure, family and social pressure, academic pressure, the more likely they are to use generative AI. And then self-competency will negatively correlate with intention to use generative AI. This being the more self-competent, the stronger belief a student has in their own abilities, the less likely they are to use generative AI. So based on these hypotheses, I'll kind of walk through my research design and then what I think will work for analyzing my research. So first of all, the participants for my study are two-year college students enrolled or previously enrolled in first-year composition. So the decision here was based on the idea that I teach first-year composition at SWIC, and we are seeing the use of generative AI in our first-year composition courses. So I think this would be a good specific sample. I'm planning on doing convenience sampling. Since I work at SWIC, I can get IR approval through the college and utilize our internal class climate survey system. I can email an invitation to currently enrolled students, and I think this will be the best approach for my project. I would like a sample size of about 350, and I think that we have 13,000 students across 3 campuses. I'm hopeful and optimistic I would get that number. If I needed to, there are some additional snowball sampling options. I could look at other community colleges in the St. Louis metro area. I could post to the two-year college association listserv, but I wanted to keep this kind of localized to SWIC. Obviously, that means I can't generalize outside of the SWIC community, but I still think that research is valuable and applicable in this context. So based on those participants and sampling, I'm considering a correlational research design. So I showed you all earlier the concepts that I'm looking at, and they're based on the theory of planned behavior, which correlates attitudes, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control to the intention to do a certain behavior. So I thought that since I'm trying to correlate 2 or more variables here, pressure, self-competency, and attitudes towards AI. I'm collecting data at one point in time. I want to analyze all the participants in a single group and measure each variable for each participant. So understand the relation between these variables. I think that lends itself to a correlational explanatory research design. So based on that, I looked at some measures that I could use for my project. I've chosen 2. One will measure attitudes towards generative AI. It's a questionnaire from Chan and Zhou 2023. There are 4 sections, and they had an acceptable Cronbach alpha and also other measures of internal reliability and validity. And then there's another questionnaire from Fatima et al. That was adapted from another study. Alexa, stop. That Alexa. So the other measure I'm going to use is a questionnaire that looks at pressure and self-competency. So both of these measures are directly measuring the variables I've chosen And the self-competency and pressure measure has been used a couple of times. The measure for generative AI is quite new, but I do think that the reliability and the validity of the measure is such that I can use it, and I think it'll be useful in this project. So here's just a screenshot of part of the Chan and Zhou questionnaire. It asks questions like, I've used generative AI technologies like ChatGPT, or I believe these can improve my digital competence or can improve my academic performance. So this is the one that's looking at attitudes towards generative AI. And then the other measure will look at pressure and self-competency. So here they have a section for pressure and a section for self-competency. So this questionnaire by Fatima et al. Has been applied to intention to plagiarize. And I'm interested in using variables that have been applied to plagiarism and applying them to the intention to use generative AI. The idea being that if we can see kind of a similar correlation to generative AI, then we can kind of have the conversation about whether generative AI and plagiarism are similar. So those are the two measures I'm going to use. Based on that, this is what I'm thinking so far for data analysis. And I don't know about y'all, but I am still a little unsure about my data analysis at this point. I haven't yet taken a statistics class at UMSL. The last one I took was in high school in 2009. So I'm sure a lot has changed since then, but I'm planning on doing my analysis with SPSS, completing descriptive and inferential statistics. So for the inferential statistics, I was thinking a Pearson correlation coefficient would work for the variable of attitudes towards generative AI, since I don't have a directional hypothesis there. And then I'm thinking a multiple regression hypothesis testing for pressure and self-competency. Like I said, I think that I'd like to do some more work here in my project. I think the analysis, kind of how my brain works, it's so much easier, I feel like, to think about how you're going to analyze the data when you have the data in front of you. But I also understand the idea of thinking through, okay, here's a type of data I have, how am I going to analyze it? So hopefully these are good choices, but I would appreciate any feedback from any of you or Susan. Thank you all so much. So based on this research design and the variables I'm looking at and the measures I have, I wanted to talk a little bit about limitations for my study. So obviously correlation doesn't equal causation. So in saying that, say, pressure is found to positively correlate with use of generative AI, that doesn't necessarily mean I can say that the more pressure a student experiences, they definitely will use generative AI. And then this isn't generalizable to the entire two-year college population, which I think would make it more applicable outside of my specific context. But I do think that it's still a valuable population to look at and is relevant to my institution and my career. Also, self-reporting attitudes and behaviors, particularly towards something like AI use, may not accurately represent what people actually do or feel. But that being said, this is often used in educational research, and I think it's an appropriate approach for this project. Pressure and self-competency are only two of the factors that can influence generative AI use, but I think this could kind of open the door for additional research in other factors. And then I did want to kind of mention the measure for the attitudes towards generative AI is very new and hasn't been applied in a lot of different contexts. So it may not have as much reliability and validity as existing measures, but it does specifically address what I am hoping to, and that's why I've chosen it. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you all taking the time to listen to my recording, and any feedback you have is absolutely welcome. I appreciate you guys, and have a good one.